I think it informs, part of my whole philosophy of activism and organizing, which is that everybody's on a journey. So I try to combat, for instance, patriarchy and racism, and not look at somebody, oh, you're a racist and I'm not. I prefer to say, for instance, that we're all infected with patriarchy, with colonialism, and with colonialism's ideology, which is racism. I didn't even understand the difference between colonialism and racism until I got involved with the Uhuru movement, and it was Chairman Amalia Shatelli's, very, very careful analysis of the history of these things that opened my eyes there. So, and that's part of the journey that I'm talking about. I grew up really in the movement, so I'm always impressed with, I have friends who grew up in, Republican households or worse, and came to...
Your call has been disconnected. Returning to your message.
Hello?
Yeah. Hi, I'm on.
It said my call's been disconnected. Are we still on?
I don't know. Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay. Yeah, maybe there was someone else on. I don't know. So as I said, really because of my mom, who came here when I was born in 1950, well, before I was born, but 1958. I was born in January of 59. And because of her background, she was a pacifist. She was for human rights, universal human rights, and so we got involved, really age 3 or 4 in 1963, marching against Vietnam in the Civil Rights Movement, the Freedom Riders. She took me and my sister, age 3 and 4, to see the March on Washington, later on, in 1968, we marched with the Black Panthers in Oakland on a cross-country summer trip. She was involved with the committee to reopen the Rosenberg case, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, who were murdered by the U.S. government, allegedly for stealing the atom bomb for Russia. But really, they were just looking. It was part of the whole McCarthyite, Red Scare stuff. They were looking for a scapegoat. How could Russia have gotten the bomb? And of course, they had to blame communists and Jews. Really, the only secret was that you could build one, because anyway, that's getting far afield. But because of that, I met people like Angela Davis, the Maripol kids, which were the children of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, gone into hiding with the Maripol family, as a teenager. That's not a usual upbringing.
Well, you said you went into hiding?
No. The Maripol, the children of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg went into hiding using the name Maripol. They were adopted by the Maripol family.
Right.
I'm just sort of giving you my background. I mean, in the early 70s, firstly in '68 we supported Eugene McCarthy, running against LBJ over Vietnam, and then in the 70s, my mom supported Shirley Chisholm. And all those things, I think, got me involved in both social justice movements, out in the street stuff, and also in politics. So early on, though, I was a Democrat. I was fighting for the better Democrats. My eyes weren't completely open, and I still believed in change that way.
How old were you then? I guess over 18, because.
Actually, when I was 17 in high school, I went down to Pennsylvania. That was my first exposure to the Philadelphia political scene, and we were in a suburb, Abington, working for Mo Udall, who was running against Scoop Jackson and other conservative Democrats in the primary. This was 1976. Of course, Jimmy Carter won that election, the primary election, and the presidency. later on, I went to school in Oregon, and then I ended up in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge, working at the university in the computer center. And in 1988, I tried to volunteer for Jesse Jackson's primary campaign. They were like, well, we don't really need your help. We're going to win the primary here. And I was, because in Baton Rouge, Democrats were mostly black and Republicans were mostly white. And I was, naive New York Jew, communist, Democrat. I was like, well, I'll knock on the white doors. And they were like, no, you won't. You'll get shot. And they were right. I mean, in retrospect, I was an idiot. While I was there, a Japanese exchange student was shot in the back on Halloween, knocking on someone's door. And the jury refused to convict. They were shot running away, right, on Halloween, knocking on someone's door. I mean, it's crazy. And, that doesn't even get to the whole history of the Jim Crow South. I mean, this was a Japanese exchange student, but it didn't matter. Anyway, the long and short of it is in the year 2000, when it became clear that the Democrats were going to nominate Gore, I just happened to turn on C-SPAN, saw Ralph Nader, and got involved with his campaign. Not intending to become a Green per se, but just, it made sense. I'd actually been trained in organizing and things like going to door, asking for money, petitioning, all those things from NYPIRG, which was one New York Public Interest Research Group. It's one of the groups that Nader helped found here in New York growing up.
Right.
And I was, I was just a kid. Trying to make money over the summer, but I learned a lot about how to do this stuff from that. And it was through that campaign that I met Mel King and Chuck Turner. I don't know if you know who those people are. But
I was going to say give a brief introduction to who they are.
Mel King was a 6-term assembly person, I think, from the state of Massachusetts. And also a professor of I forget whether it was government or some other similar kind of thing at MIT. And he in 1983 he ran for mayor of Boston, and actually that's where his campaign ran under the rubric of the Rainbow Coalition, and then after that election he started the Rainbow Coalition Party of Massachusetts. Jesse Jackson came to town because he was running as to be the first black mayor of Boston, and supported his campaign and borrowed the term Rainbow Coalition, but it really didn't come from Mel or from Jesse Jackson. It came from Fred Hampton. Okay. And and Chuck Turner was a District 7 city councilor. He was a former drug counselor helping kids in the neighborhood and got elected to the city council. And he was actually even a little more radical than Mel. But they both came up, through the civil rights, but also through the Panther movement. And they'd gotten elected, and actually that's how I met Kazi Toure, because me and him both served on. Chuck Turner had a round table where he would political education in the Fred Hampton style to his community, which was Roxbury, Dorchester, and Boston. So he would on I think the third Saturday he would have a round table with the community. He would feed them, and then there would be some issue that he would educate them about. And me and Kazi and Gary Hicks and some other folks were involved in planning those events.
Oh, okay.
And, all of that, my mom got sick in 2005, and I came down to New York and helped her out. Got a job here, and, eventually, at that point I wasn't really active in the Green Party, but what happened in 2008, as you mentioned, was Cynthia McKinney decided to run for president as a Green. And it was really that past activity in Massachusetts. Me and Mel King ended up engineering the merger of the Rainbow Coalition Party and the Green Party in Massachusetts, which was completed by 2003 before I left. And it's now the Green Rainbow Party, it's called, in Massachusetts. And it's because of that Cynthia McKinney invited me to Philadelphia for what was called the Reconstruction Party Conference.
Right.
Because, because there was, at that point in time, there was ambition to create a Reconstruction Party to finish the job that was left unfinished in the 1870s when they made a deal for a Republican president and all the troops left the South. And you could look at that as, at the time it was the Republicans and not the Democrats, but, it was the first of many ways in which the major parties in this country collaborate and run game on all of us. Good cop, bad cop.
Right.
But in the process, they give away, the gains that people went out in the streets and fought for, whether it's, labor union,
right,
the New Deal, women's rights, health care, you name it,
Which is why so many jobs have gone away, and also the unions have basically disappeared. Maybe we might be 12%, the working population. Maybe 12% of it is they work have union protection.
Right. I mean, the Democrats come around every 2 years or every 4 years and want union support, but then where are they when the unions are being eaten out from the inside,
Right.
And that me and you were both at recently at this memorial for Ralph Pointer, who grew up the son of a CIO labor organizer. But, most Americans today don't really know the difference between the AFL, the CIO, and the Wobblies, the IWW, International Workers of the World. So there were different forms of union organizing. And, of course, the AFL kicked the CIO, the communists, out of the union movement. And, they started to become less democratic, more corrupt. You still want to support union workers out on strike, but for instance, in the early 1980s, when I was in Portland, Oregon, and PATCO, the air traffic controllers, were on strike, but they wouldn't ask the other unions for help. There was a possibility of a general strike at the airports. And we went out to the airport and said, why aren't you asking the AFL the AFL-CIO at that point to join you on the picket lines? And they were like, well, if we do that, then we'll have to go out when the pilots and the stewardesses and the cafeteria workers go on strike. That's the kind of lack of solidarity where the unions were just about an individual worker and what he or she had to gain, and not a spirit of solidarity in a movement, right?
Right.
And I said to them, you're probably going to lose your job because of that, because of things like that. And that didn't matter. They trusted their bosses, and they did lose their jobs. As people might remember. But getting back to 2008, Cynthia had this conference and invited me to it, the Reconstruction Party, and it was there that I met Colia Clark, for instance. She was amazing. She helped organize the lunch counter protest in Mississippi in 1962. She was part of SNCC. She was a special assistant to Medgar Evers. And because she lived in Harlem in New York, we rode down together to Philly and back. And I also met Kalia Kuno, who was a leader in socialist alternative, I believe. He's now a leader in Jackson, Mississippi with Cooperation Jackson. The movement there, that's, for instance, fighting for water rights in Jackson, Mississippi. And I also met, I was at the conference, and I think on the second day, since I had driven down, I had a car, and Cynthia said, "Can you go to the bus station and pick up Pam Africa?" And I'd never met Pam Africa, and she had never met me. So I said, "Well, Pam doesn't really know me. Is she going to get in the car?" And Cynthia said, "Why doesn't Kalia go with you?" So me and Kalia went to the bus station. She, she saw Pam, waved, said, "Pam, come here." And so Pam got in the back with her. And right when Pam got in, Etta James, CD was playing on my car stereo. Etta James came on with "I Want to Break Up Somebody's Home." And both of them started giggling in the back, And long and short of it is, by the time we got back to the conference, Pam had signed me up to be involved in the Mumia fight, in the Mumia movement. Right. And also, I already knew about, but involved me in the struggle for the Move 9. Wow. The political prisoners who were guilty only of surviving an assault on their home. The first of two. This was the one where they just shot up the house and arrested 9 people. Later, after Mumia was incarcerated, they of course burned down the house, killed 5 children, 6 adults, and burnt down the entire block, not just the house where the moved people lived. Right. They were protecting the community in the same sense that we were protecting the Vietnamese by burning them down to the ground, right? Anyway, and that's really how we met. I don't know whether we met as part of Cynthia's campaign or the Mumia movement first, because when I got back to New York, me and Kalia, especially because of this Reconstruction Party idea, we started New York Power of the People, so that there would be an organization that wasn't just the Greens in New York, but the Reconstruction people working cooperatively as opposed to separately. That was a lesson. I learned from the 2000 campaign. It was effective, but there were differences between the Green and the Rainbow Coalition Party. Just institutional differences, normal stuff. Normal stuff that you see in the left. Differences between groups, sometimes who used to be part of the same organization, sometimes just, rival organizations, but fighting for more or less the same stuff. And those things always get in the way, as you know. So we just realized we had to have one campaign, not 2. Right. And I also started going to the Free Mumia Abu Jamal Coalition meetings up at St. Mary's Church. And that's where I met Suzanne Ross, Sundiata Sadiq, Henry Higgins, you, and other people. Or maybe it was at the Breck Center where we had our meetings for the campaign. Right. It could have, I don't remember either. Yeah. But you were one of the first people to show up, and as well as Ralph, Betty, and Lynn Stewart. And that's how I met all of you, was really through Cynthia's campaign. So where do we stand now with the Greens? What do you think, what's going on? Do you think they're going to run somebody? Well, we haven't had our national convention yet. We did have our state convention where Jill Stein got 12 delegates, I believe, and Jasmine Sherman got 1 to the national convention, which is happening over the summer. Okay. Yeah, I should mention, I am, in addition to the Free Mumia Abu Jamal Coalition, which works on Mumia's case, but also other political prisoners, I also joined the Jericho movement under the national leadership of Jihad and the local leadership of Van Lam. And part of the reason I joined Jericho was because they focus more on the lesser-known political prisoners, and partially because both organizations, the Free Mumia Abu Jamal Coalition and Jericho Movement, were founded by Sophia Bakari.
Right.
And again, the approach I took was, join as many organizations as possible and get them to work together. That's just sort of the natural organizing tendency that I grew up in.
I see.
Seeking solidarity.
Right. It would be. Well, now there's three different Mumia organizations. It would be nice to get them all, at least the ones in New York, to work collaboratively together.
Yeah, I don't know if they need to be
happen.
one organization, but I think we do need to work together. I mean, there is value.
Yes.
For instance, the campaign to bring Mumia home is much better at working with young people, at working through academics, at some of the initiatives that you had of interviewing political prisoners that are just brilliant.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and so I think there is value in different approaches to the same struggle.
Yes.
It just and we do. We've had to learn how to collaborate on things like it wouldn't make sense to have 3 mostly empty buses going out of Philadelphia. So we worked together on the events that happened down there. We worked together even on the events here in New York. We just recently had the health committee that you were part of did a really great event at St. Mary's where we used to meet when we first met. Both for Mumia and for Palestine. And that was a brilliant, and at that, it was organized by the health committee, but me and Betsy Mickle, who are in the Free Mumia Coalition, worked the door. Other people, worked serving food, helping set up, the live stream of the event, all the different pieces that go into an event like that. Came from different organizations, and that's a thing of beauty. And
exactly, yeah.
And
Thank you, yeah.
And maybe too rare in the movements. Like we have 3 major peace organizations in this country too. And it's not clear that that's to the interest of combating militarism, right, and colonialism.
Are you including UNAC in that?
Yeah, UNAC, United for Justice and Peace, and I can't remember the third right now, but that's the point. And who can remember it all and understand what their differences are all about? Answer's the third one.
Okay.
But there may be more. If I'm leaving somebody out and they're mad at me now because I didn't leave the 4th one in, that's to me part of how we're burning our own energy and instead of finding our common ground and actually achieving what we need.
Hello, it's Adrian.
And you asked about the Green Party. So I'm also chair of the New York County, which is Manhattan Green Party, basically, and I'm also co-chair of the Diversity Committee. It's called of the National Green Party. But even within my own party, there's people that are there for what we call diversity and inclusion. And there's people that are there for anti-colonial struggle. And it's like, well, both are related to each other, liberation struggle and anti-colonial struggle. But it's a different approach to the same problem, right?
Right.
And, I don't criticize the folks that are there just for diversity and inclusion, but it's part of the issue. For instance, are reparations just for the descendants of U.S. slaves, or were there slaves in Haiti and South America? Is the problem of colonialism larger? We had Obama when he got elected. I cried just like everyone else, even though by then I was agreeing, and I had worked for Cynthia McKinney in that same election. But I cried because it was moving that he had become president. But he also, he appointed Hillary Clinton to Secretary of State, and they bombed Libya, ending the free housing, free education, health care, all the things that we need that they were getting already under Gaddafi. And I shouldn't even say under Gaddafi because that's sort of corporate speak. That's part of the propaganda.
Mm.
And he
but
also,
it's true. Nonetheless, it's true.
Go ahead. And he said,
nonetheless, it is true. I mean, he may have been a dictator. I don't really know that much about him, but the point is that he still that is in pushed for things that would help life, would make easier, was easier, even though politically maybe he, like I said, he was a dictator, but at least you had health care and free education, and those are things we don't have here, which cost billions of dollars, and we could save money in this country by having a universal health care, but that's not going to help the coffers of the health industry, the medical industrial complex. That's not going to benefit them. So naturally, that's why we don't have it.
Yeah, and I mean, what I would note is that, as you said, he used the oil money to help his people. And maybe that was, how he became a quote-unquote populist dictator, or maybe, in other countries which have quote-unquote democracy, they have former colonizers, for instance, in what we call Latin America. It's really an indigenous population, but Spanish and Portuguese elites that always get elected, and they just give their resources away to the multinational corporations. It's not just Libya. Obama sent troops to North Africa, AFRICOM.
Right.
I mean, I think Obamacare was an improvement over, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and lose your home when you get cancer. But it isn't national health care, and even I work with Jill now, Jill Stein. I've known her 25 years, since Massachusetts. She ran for governor first time out of a community space that I was the chair of the organization that kept that place open. But but it wasn't the, and Jill, I was saying, Jill says Medicare for all. I've learned that there is a difference between real national health care and Medicare, which is, A, was never perfect, and B, is being more privatized, just like, everything about the New Deal and the Great Society is being rolled back. And, Roe v. Wade got rolled back. Everything's,
Right.
There is a difference. Democrats, the Greens that say there's no difference between the Republicans and Democrats are crazy. But is the difference between taking away our rights and giving them up slowly, is that really as big a difference as people think?
Right.
Right. So somebody has to be fighting to keep our rights or even expand them, right?
Yes, like the Green Party.
Right, like the Green Party, but also the African People's Socialist Party, the PSL, there's others. I mean, I have the same, why are we running this year, the movement? We're running at least Cornel West, Jill Stein, and Claudia de la Cruz. I've known all three of them for a long time. They've all supported Mumia. They've also agree on most of the issues. I don't know if Monica Moorhead's running, but that would be a fourth. I mean, are we really going to get what we need with running four people?
Right.
For office, and instead of creating a larger movement where we work together, not only on electoral politics, but on fighting for the rights and the vision that we have for the society.
Do you happen to know what the issue was with Cornell and the Green Party?
I don't know all the details. I know that Cornell started with the People's Party. It was actually Jill that convinced him to run in the Green Party. She didn't want to run again, but she had no choice after he left. I know that there are issues. I mean, I understand why Cynthia McKinney, for instance, had and needed to have a Reconstruction Party. that part of why I'm fighting for anti-colonial and liberation struggle within the Green Party is because we're not even that movement and party, which on paper is great. It can't really create the social movement we need, the universal social movement we need, without A, getting rid of its institutional behavior, and B, without giving a real seat at the table and not just token candidates that represent, not just those communities, but what those communities need.
Right.
And often we need the same thing, but we talk about it in different language. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on here. There's all kinds of ways they divide us and conquer us, right? And by they, I mean the bankers, the colonizers, the patriarchs.
And the politicians.
Well, the politicians who work for those systems of oppression. But like I said, I don't point fingers. Within the Black Caucus of the Green Party, there are ADOS people and there are African internationalists. And I stay out of their dispute. I have a very strong opinion, obviously, towards internationalism. I don't think we're going to solve. We're not going to solve the collapse of the empire of capitalism and the climate, one country at a time, right? And part of why I chose the Green Party, despite its shortcomings and flaws, is that A, they have done 30 years of work to get on the ballot, to have a platform that's worthy, to have shared values that unite us, and they also exist internationally, right? There are Green Parties in many countries. And it's really only the African People's Socialist, as far as I know, correct me again if I'm wrong and there's a fourth party out there, but as far as I know, it's only the Communist Party, the African People's Socialist Party, and the Green Party that actually exists across more than one or two or three countries. And I just don't think we're going to solve the world's problems, based on elections inside a country. I think we have to have an international movement that, to solve a lot of these problems. Because the corporations are already global. Like there's this whole false choice of nationalism and globalism. The billionaires and the corporations, they're already global. I'm for local autonomy. I'm for cultural differences and celebrating those, but the workers don't have a chance if we're just, everybody's, the workers are all stuck, the countries are almost a prison. They just move the job from place to place, so the unions get, their power gets eroded because if you go on strike and everybody loses their job and the jobs go to Burma, it's not that I'm against the Burmese people having jobs too. That's how we fix the problem in the long run. But of course, the U.S. military is supporting these regimes in those countries that prevent workers from organizing, prevent people from having rights, prevent, that's what I was going to say about Gaddafi. Going back to that, there's so many countries in Latin America where just because somebody's a former labor organizer, they're assassinated. Just because somebody is a little left of center, they're overthrown. And that's done by by our CIA, by our military, in cooperation. I mean, the first head of the CIA was the Dulles brothers from United Fruit Company. So was it U.S. policy or was it United Fruit Company's policy? That's why they started calling them banana republics, right? We have to have a global approach, and especially with climate collapse. I mean, people are upset on both sides of this, of the major parties in this election over the border crisis, quote unquote. We're talking about maybe 10,000, 20,000 people a day. When the climate collapses, it's going to be billions of people at the borders of the West, whether it's Europe or the U.S. And the solution can't be to build a wall and imprison people.
Right, and
we created this climate collapse, and then we have billions of people fleeing to save their lives. We have to have a global solution.
They're also coming here for jobs too, because in their countries they're not able to have to earn a decent salary to take care of their family, largely because we're in their country. Well, militarily and economically, those companies don't do anything for the people. They get minuscule pay, like in Haiti, and I think Disney is there in Haiti, and they get paid pennies, like 31 cents an hour or whatever it is. It's very low, but because they can't do that here, obviously, in the United States. But like I said, many of those people are fleeing because of economic reasons. Why would they leave, a beautiful country where it's warm and their family if they couldn't survive where they were? Which I can certainly understand, because particularly when you have children, you don't want to see them, frittering away their youth and what have you, if their country can't really provide a decent wage where they can have a family of their own. So a lot of them are fleeing for economic and political reasons, political repression, what have you. So, and let's face it, a lot of us Americans don't want to do the job that they're doing. So it's not like, we can't use the help. That's the way I look at it.
No, absolutely right. And I mean, we keep making this mistake over and over again to the point where we can't even really call it a mistake. In Iran, we had Mossadegh in the 50s. The CIA overthrew him. And now, Iran's our enemies, and we have a theocratic government in Iran. So we had somebody who was socialist to the extent that he wanted to nationalize the oil companies and for the Iranian people to benefit from that oil in the same way that they did in Libya, for instance.
Right.
And he was left of center, but he wasn't a communist. And even if he was, I'm a communist.
That's their right.
Right. That's their right to choose that. And we ended up with much worse.
Right.
In Afghanistan, the same thing. There was a socialist government, but women had rights. They could go to school. They could wear miniskirts in the 70s. In Kabul, there were hippies running around in miniskirts. We just got out of a war, the U.S., where we occupied Afghanistan, and we didn't achieve anything there other than
yes, Wild West there. I mean, they're back to selling drugs and stuff like that. I mean, from what I remember,
well, that's a little complicated because actually, I mean, the Mujahideen, they're theocrats too, and that's not what I want. What anybody really wants for the Afghani people. But especially women. But they actually cracked down on the drug traffickers, and
that's good.
The heroin traffic was the U.S. invasion that revived the heroin trade.
Right.
That's not an accident. There's a book by Alfred McCoy, The Politics of Heroin, which talks about how the CIA made a deal very early on in World War II. Because the same thing, and Mussolini was a fascist, absolutely. He collaborated with a genocidal monster in Germany. But by the way, Hitler was funded to power by John Rockefeller, Henry Ford, Prescott Bush, U.S. industrialists. IBM ran the computer program that cataloged all the Jews of Europe. So they profited.
Oh my God.
And Alfred McCoy's book is about how the CIA made a deal with the drug dealers because Mussolini did crack down on the mafia, not because he was a good guy, but because they were a threat to his power.
Right.
But the CIA itself was formed by merging the OSS with Nazi intelligence. during the middle of World War II, in the middle of the war, while they were still fighting. First of all, Ford and GM had munitions plants in Berlin, in Germany. They were making military products that killed U.S. soldiers. But the Air Force wouldn't bomb those factories because they were owned by U.S. GM and Ford. And it was after World War II, the House and Senate that wanted to investigate that with the help of the State Department. And Joe McCarthy runs around saying there's communists in the State Department. It was really a cover-up of these multinational corporations that played both sides of World War II. And in the middle of the war, IT&T, IT&T had International Telephone and Telegraph. They had a board meeting in Madrid, and the head, the German branch of IT&T was run by the same person who ran Nazi intelligence. And our military gave him safe transport to Madrid in the middle of the war. You would think that would be a target, right?
Yes.
But they gave him safe passage because IT&T and the corporate structure was more important than the war. And this was FDR who gave us the New Deal. So, but of course, it wasn't really FDR. It was, the whole military-industrial complex was, worked more for John Rockefeller and Henry Ford and the billionaires here than they did for the president. That's the reality we live under. We may elect a president, but the problem is that the approved candidates for the major parties are all blessed by Wall Street.
Wow. We're in some kind of trouble here because, for me, I see Trump, 45, I call him too, and Biden, two wings on the same bird as well. It's just that Biden sticks the knife in your back a little bit slower, So I'd rather, I'd rather deal with the person who's honest and say, that they don't really like you for whatever reason, versus Biden, he's not going to say that, but in his head he's thinking that people of color, are less than him, and he's entitled to take whatever it is he wants. The government. I don't mean him personally, but the corporations, that go into these countries, should be allowed to have things that are not really theirs. They just go in and take it and destroy, the infrastructure, and many lives, are lost. Just like this war. Well, not war, this genocide in Palestine, which is happening, and he's not doing anything. He's not. He's letting it, happen, and then he's thinking there's not going to be any blowback from that. No, the people are going to pay, not him. He's going to be flown somewhere safe. But we're going to suffer.
I wouldn't say there's no difference. I think Trump is, both. He is a real threat in the same way Hitler was. But also just this notion of the rule of law. Of course, there's not equal law, but it was known before he was elected that he committed fraud left and right, that he didn't pay his contractors, that he raped not just women but teenage women. This was all known before he was elected in 2016, and honestly, you could say that the voters didn't know. I'm a little darker. Yeah, they knew. I think some of them voted for him because of that. Again, because, this strongman syndrome,
Right.
Biden is corrupt, and he works for Wall Street, and just like, again, there is a difference. I'm not against Obamacare. I just don't think it's a solution, but it helped millions of people.
Yes.
But
it's not what we need, though.
It's not what we need, and Medicare is being privatized, so are we moving forward or backwards? I don't know. We just recently, I just got on Medicare in January, and I take insulin for diabetes, and I need to have either a finger prick meter, which you have to, have lancets and test strips, or you have to have a Dexcom or a glucose meter, the Dexcom or Freestyle Libre, and I'm sure there may be other brands. I'm sorry to the companies. I just promoted somebody else's product. But you need those things if you're not going to go low and end up in the hospital with organ damage. So it's nice that the cost of insulin's gone down, but is it safe to use when you can't get those things? So the first Dexcom in February I got, 3 of them because you have to replace them every 10 days. But when I went to refill, my local pharmacy said, we can't fill it. I was like, why? This is not paid by Medicaid. It's paid by Medicare, right? So I was like, why? And they say, the Medicare computers are down. Oh, okay. They'll be up in a couple days. Even the pharmacists thought yes. But they were down for a month. And they were down for a month not because something went wrong with them. They went down because United Healthcare had a data breach.
Right. Oh, right.
Well, why is this government program using a software system that was vulnerable because of United Healthcare's data breach? Even the Medicare rights people I work with, they don't get an answer. They don't get a straight answer. Nobody's going to admit it. But it's just another form of privatization, right?
Right.
They're all dependent on software that was, Wall Street made a larger profit because they released it with a security hole. And I know, because I spent 40 years as a software developer. I know when you work for a company, and I did for 40 years, that answers to Wall Street, they release stuff that they know isn't complete.
Isn't so hot, yeah.
It has security holes, it has known bugs, and and they do that because they want to make a greater profit, and that's more important.
Right.
It's more important than preventing people on Medicare and or Medicaid from
getting the proper care that they need.
From getting the proper
and
care
equipment.
and having protection and not in the hospital with organ damage because they took too much insulin. Right? And
so perverse.
It is better. Obamacare is better, and Biden helped lower the cost of insulin. But if you're using it unsafely, that's not really the help you need, is it?
Right. That's correct.
And I also, because I worked in the computer industry 40 years, I know we worked on programs that were on fault-tolerant computers that used Ada, so that they wouldn't get errors like divide by zero, simple errors, right? But the Ada code was reserved for high value military code, right? Where they couldn't have the system fail on the battlefield.
Right.
Although I don't think they care about the privates. I think But anyway, that's another story. But the point is, they know how to write code that's more fault tolerant. It's just more expensive. And so the real message is that if you're on Medicare, or Medicaid, or even if you work for, for Wall Street, basically for a company, for one of our great U.S. corporations, your life doesn't really matter, not the same way. Right. Yeah, the profit matters first. And that's the problem. That's why we all are struggling, right? That's why we all struggle to get by and still have enough time in the day to fight for the things we want, like, stopping the genocide in Palestine, like shutting down Rikers, like getting the healthcare system we need.
This is true. But on other fronts, like the political prisoner issue, Mumia Abu-Jamal specifically, so we're working on that together. Speaking of working together, to try to bring a busload.
Yeah, we're going to have a bus on April 24th. You can go to freemumia.com, FREEMUMIA.com, or to the campaign to bring Mumia home, or to Jericho. But freemumia.com's the principal source of the information on the bus. And so go there, and the lead article is about. There's also 3 calendar events, the 2 events in Philly and the bus. And you can get either by calling the hotline at 212-330-8029 or going to mumia2424.eventbrite.com. You can make a bus seat reservation, and you can
we'll
join
bring
us.
you down, and we'll bring you down.
We'll bring you down and bring you home
from
safely.
New York. Right, exactly.
And you can participate in the rally in March for Mumia on his 70th birthday, Wednesday, April 24th. And there's also a program in the evening, and we'll be leaving around 8 o'clock to get back here so that we know the subways start. We call it public transportation, but it's really a subsidy not for people. It's for the corporations. They all run in towards the center city and out, but try to get between Brooklyn and Queens.
Right.
And try to get on it at 3 in the morning. It's not for people. It's not public transportation. Public transportation, by the way, would mean free. It's mass transit.
Right.
It's just like Medicare. It's privatized, and we call it public. But public schools are, you don't pay tuition at public schools. Public libraries don't want money unless your book's late, right?
Right.
Free. Public means free. And we've lost even the meaning of our own words in this corporate culture.
Yeah, this is true. But we live to fight another day. We do the right thing for the right cause.
Right. Neither of us have given up hope. Obviously, we wouldn't be organizers, let alone activists, if we had given up hope. Obviously, the people still have the power. We just have to.
That's true. We have to use it and work together.
We have to use it, and we have to deconstruct the propaganda. We have to deconstruct the patriarchy and the colonialism. And that's why I don't call somebody a racist or a sexist, even if they do really horrible things. Because in the end, the only solution is that we do that deconstruction, and then we're all on a journey, and we all
growth.
For growth and self-examination and deconstructing the ways in which we've been infected by things that are killing us, right? That are not healthy.
That's true.
We have to help each other.
Racism is not healthy.
Right. We have to help each other through that. Racism is just fear of people who look a little different. Sexism is just fear of men or women. Fear of each other. Well, that's not how we're going to get to a healthy relationship.
That's very true. That's very true. But we have to work together because, the enemy, they look for holes, and they try to sabotage.
Yeah, they exploit that fear. So they tell a woman who's got a little more meat on the bone that's a problem, that she has to wear makeup, that she has to buy a purse that's, $5,000.
And she has to marry somebody
who's rich.
Right, who's rich.
But who isn't kind and doesn't care about her orgasm and doesn't care about her rights and her independence and happiness, right?
This is true. Well, Gil, it's been interesting getting to know you, your background, and why you do, what you're doing and why we work together. I want to thank you for being part of the show today, and maybe we'll do it again at some point.
Hello? I'm here, and I want to thank you for everything you did, the event at St. Mary's, the work we've done together for Mumia, but also, for the Green Party and just for Palestine, for people's rights, for women's right to choose, to have the same health care that, that she would have almost anywhere else in the industrialized world, but doesn't have because of capitalism, but also doesn't have because of sexism and patriarchy.
Exactly. We have to work, against those things.
Sister Gwen.
So, okay, this is the end of the show.
I think there's somebody else speaking.
I don't know. Let me see. Hello? Who's on?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, mic check.
Hey, Forrest.
Yeah, I thought you were going to do a Q&A or a commentary moment there because you had some people dinging in. I thought they might want to ask Brother Gill some questions or make a comment.
No, I wasn't,
do we have time kind of,
not really, no. It's
no. Wait a minute, sis. We do have a little time because the next show's not on the 7, and it's a little after 6 now. So technically you got 90 minutes, but you can do your show for as long as you want, but we do have a little time.
Okay, I guess let's take.
Yeah, I'd welcome it, and I'd also welcome people, to join the movement. I'm available even after the show. But go ahead.
Well, thank you.
Go ahead, Forrest.
Well, thank you, sis. First of all, I just want to say to you, Gwen, thank you for bringing Brother Gill on because he's a wealth of information. I want to make a comment and ask a question real fast. Brother Gill, first is a comment. On this network, we have on my podcast, which airs Saturday, we have healers that come on from a holistic perspective, other than conventional medicine. Now, are you a lifetime native New Yorker or what? Where are you originally from?
I grew up here in New York. My dad grew up in Brownsville. My mom actually grew up in Palestine, and he got her pregnant with me.
Well, of course,
and brought her back. And go ahead. But I spent many years away in Oregon, Louisiana, and Massachusetts before I came back. I came back in 2005 when my mom got sick. But go ahead.
Well, there's a gentleman who's been a part of the New York community for a very long time by way of West Virginia. His name was Gary Knoll. He's a nutritionist. And if you go on Gary's website, he has actually helped to reverse diabetes in his patients, as well as part of that AIDS epidemic, which is part of the pandemic. All right, and he actually and nobody has ever sued him, so he must know what he's talking about. Okay. Also on this network, we have Brother Rashad El-Amin, who's been a naturopath for 40 years, and he's helped to reverse in some of his clientele diabetes. And basically, it boils down to nutrition and, of course, your discipline with your nutrition. But see, you're a wealth of information in terms of giving us information. As far as due diligence, listen, I'm not here to rate you. Like you said, you don't rate sexism or racism, but I can't judge you. But I think that if you do a little more research, Gil, and not saying you haven't. Like I said, this is my first time hearing you. By the way, I was at the church in Harlem. I missed you. Gwen invited me out, and I came, and I listened to via closed circuit with Sister Africa, the pastor. I know I saw Gwen, Shirley was there. So I didn't get a chance to meet you, and I had the gentleman, Jose. He came on my network from the rap program. I know he addressed the audience when he was there. Right. So I just want to say to you, brother, please, because that's reversible. I've been plant-based now. Outside of being plant-based, the only thing I take outside of a plant-based diet is my cod liver oil, which is for my joints for, like when I work out because I stay active. Class of 1975, Gil. I'm 67. I celebrated my birthday yesterday. I just turned 67. All right.
Happy birthday, Forrest.
Well, thank you, Sister Gwen. Now, what I want to ask you, Brother Gil, on when you say the OSS, which is the Nazi organization, and the CIA. Now, was the CIA already? I just want to make sure I dot all my I's and cross all my T's. And like I said, thank you for the information. But you mentioned that with the Nazi OSS, if I'm getting
no, the OSS was the Allied U.S. intelligence. The Nazi intelligence merged with them to form the CIA and start the Cold War. Our previous ally, the Soviet Union, was suddenly the enemy.
Okay, so now the OSS was formulated out of what country? Where did that?
The OSS was the U.S. intelligence service during the war. But just like we brought the Nazi rocket scientists here to, we brought a lot of their intelligence because the billionaires who funded Hitler, they just wanted to stop the unions in Germany and the communists in Russia, and and they tried to overthrow FDR, There was, Smedley Butler. There was a plot in 1933, I think, that he stopped, but they tried to get military people to overthrow FDR. And they replaced Henry Wallace with Truman, which, was preparation for the Cold War and for this, the formation of the CIA and dropping the bomb. Right. They replaced him as the vice presidential candidate ahead of FDR's death. And, that's basically how we ended up with the Cold War. And we ended up with Vietnam and the continued occupation of Haiti and everything else that's going on today.
And you know what, Gil? I can understand probably the collaboration because then they knocked it. But then again, that's just a smoke screen. Right. The dog and pony show when America was saying Nazis are so bad. But if I'm not mistaken, you got some Nazi hierarchy in Ukraine, from what I understand. Right. So, and it's funny because we have a gentleman that comes on this network, John Monroe. He does the eye care. And his father was in the service. And he said his father was part of the brigade that knocked the walls down over there in Germany. And they said they found these space-like ships where people could sit in them, and basically they had like legs on them, and they were used as machinery by the Nazi army. And he said his father told him this story, all right, about how these spaceship-looking crafts were used by the German army. And I was like, wow, So a lot of what you're saying rings the truth, And you know what? Are you familiar with the fact, just recently I heard that I believe William Peppers passed. Remember, he was the author of that book on the Kennedy.
Yes, on Martin Luther King. Mm-hmm.
On Martin Luther King. I'm sorry, not the Kennedys, but they all linked together. It's government backed. But he passed. But you know what, Gwen, and also Brother Gil, I want to say this. He also mentioned, and Gary Noe had it on his program today, and I respect that guy so much because a lot of what he says is he drops bombs. But they were saying that with the information, and Brother Rashad has a book about this also, the information he was given that Jesse Jackson, and the commentary came off his show today, all right? Jesse Jackson had a lot to do with the assassination of Dr. King because he was the one who was instrumental. Dr. King was on the ground floor, and he was the one who moved him to the balcony floor, okay? So, like I said, I'm just saying this comment was made today, and I believe William Peppers had brought that out in the book. And I heard an interview with William Peppers, okay? And you never know why people die mysteriously or too soon before their time. Sometimes it can be induced by the oppressor or the colonizer. So we all know that the COINTELPRO and things of that nature, there's a lot of things that I don't put anything past this government, Brother Gil. And you mentioned the military-industrial complex because I think it was Eisenhower who warned about a shadow government. I think Kennedy spoke on it. And you see what happened to Kennedy, okay? How does the President of the United States get assassinated? Come on now. Right. You kidding me? But anyway,
I mean, Eisenhower had a better public housing policy than Democrats today. So, and by the way, I mean, this thing between, the Nazis and it's deeper than just a couple of industrialists and protecting IBM and GM and Ford after the war. Hitler sent Germans to the United States to learn about the eugenics movements at Yale and Harvard. He studied the Jim Crow laws in terms of what they did in the Holocaust.
Yes. It was in his book, Mein Kampf, I think he said he thanked the United States for learning from them. And I was like, wow. And there are many books. I mean, I learned a lot of what I told you from this book by Charles Higham called Trading with the Enemy, the money conspiracy or something like that, between the multinationals and the Nazis. But there's also IBM and the Holocaust. Rachel Maddow has a book now about the Nazi movement, in the country, during FDR's term, and all these things are linked, Wait a minute, you talking about Rachel, MSNBC, Rachel Maddow?
Yep, she has a new book out, about how it was fought in this country. I mean, Charles Higham and others did deeper dive into the real ties between during how the corporations really controlled. And it was oil too. I mean, John Rockefeller, FDR went to John Rockefeller and asked him why they were selling oil to the gasoline and oil and jet fuel to the Nazis cheaper than to the U.S. And Rockefeller told FDR, "Shut up, or we'll cut you off." and FDR, Hitler made the mistake of not marching. He marched on Moscow instead of the oil fields in southern Russia. And FDR, who was a little smarter, sent his generals to North Africa first and Saudi Arabia, and instead of invading in Normandy first, right? And then he went back to FDR when they controlled the oil fields and said, if you get my meaning. And that's when that turned the tide, because now the multinational corporations that were betting both sides of the war, he had them between a rock and a hard place because we had control of the oil fields.
Well, let me say this to you, okay?
Yeah.
Because you're looking at someone who never took the jab, and you have some very reputable people, Peter McCullough, Dr. Malone, and also I would advise everybody to check out George Martin, Dr. George Martin, David Martin, I'm sorry. He tells you, we had on this program Dr. Irene, I don't want to get her last name mixed up, starts with an M, but she was on here, and she's just a regular board-certified physician. She was, a specialty was, she was neurological, and she explained that when she did research, she was approaching her superiors about certain things that were flaws and what was being told to the public out here. And they told her, shush, don't make no waves. She actually had to leave and go elsewhere. And she revealed that to us. And she was, listen, she was, Gil, she was giving me equations that I'm not a doctor. I wasn't familiar with what she was saying, but I understood what she was saying, spiritually. So what I'm saying is, you have some Jessica Rose, all right? You have people who are rebuking this jab. They're saying this gene therapy is all about money, and there never was an epidemic, all right, or a pandemic, of nature. So Rachel Maddow is in a mixed bag because her and some of the other people, like what's his name with the late night show, they're pushing this thing, okay? And they're pushing death upon people. They're not going to give you the complete stats. And the FDA, you probably know this because you're a research man, but then again, we're sharing support up here with information. The FDA got forced by a judge to release the side effects of this jab. Now, just recently I heard a clip where one guy said there was two processes for this. It was one that they did research on and one that they gave to the public. That was the second process, which means that they wanted to see how it would work without having to do the research. And they always told us they did the research on just one total protocol, which is not the case. But a judge found out that Pfizer did not want to release any information for a whole 75 years. Now, most of us are going to be gone by then, unless you got the blood of Methuselah in you, all right? We're going to be gone by then. So why 75 years to make a revelation? Because it'll be forgotten. And Anthony Fauci, which, Robert Kennedy Jr. wrote that book, The Real Anthony Fauci. Woo, that's telling. Nobody sued him, even though we know Robert Kennedy does have attorneys, but nobody has stepped out to sue him. Okay? The Real Anthony Fauci tells and gives you dates about how the public has been lied to. And I'm going to tell you something. I have never taken that jab. I know how to take care of it. I know what my body needs. I know how to take care of it. All right? That's the bedrock for everything. All right? A lot of people on these high-processed, poor diets, and that's why they suffer, because their immune systems are weak. And it's just a basic protocol. Quercetin, vitamin C.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I resisted taking insulin for a really long time. I did manage my diabetes for over 2 decades, just with diet and with a pill, metformin, but mostly with diet. But it's a degenerative disease, and I ended up in the hospital at one point, and I accepted, adding insulin to the mix. But it's still mostly, you're right, it's still mostly bad habits. And I do have some bad eating habits, which I'm working on.
Okay, there you go.
So
if I was your friend, I'd cut them out. I'd be on you. You'd probably kick me out of the house.
No, it's and I also agree with you about MSNBC. I mean, you can get useful information, but I know the difference between Howard Zinn and Omali Yeshitela on one hand, and liberals like Matthew Maddow and Chris Hayes and them. You know, in terms of the quality of the information and the depth to which they'll go. You know.
Right.
So I get what you're saying, and you know, but I try to avoid something like the left, even though I am very far left. I try to avoid some of the left-right paradigm even because there are people on the quote-unquote right that have something to say about the Federal Reserve Bank and that have something to say about the things you're talking about the corporate health care and and our diet and the poisons that are that we're being fed. And that's part of that approach I was talking about in the beginning, that we're all on a journey and many of us want the same things. We just talk in different language.
Right. Well, and that boils down to one language that we all speak, the spirit of freedom and the quality of life. But you know what, I'm going to let you go, Gil. Thank you so very much for coming on with that information. And once again, you have sparked my engine to do the right thing by the human family. Thank you so much. And thank you, Gwen, for bringing this wonderful brother on tonight. I appreciate you.
Oh, no. Well, I knew he had a lot of information, and I knew his background, but I didn't know, like the whole story of how he became, a progressive and radical. So I wanted to know, more about him. And I wanted the grown folks community to understand that all Caucasian are bad.
We know that.
But we have some real people that are serious about changing the dynamics and how the political system works, and want to see us have a better political system, because what we have now is not working. It's getting. Who would have thought that Roe versus Wade would be gone? I guess a lot of women thought, they'll never, but no, these people are serious. They want to take us back to the 50s and further. They want to go backwards instead of going forward. Who would think? Who wants to do that? That's crazy. That's crazy. They want to turn this country into a theocracy.
More than Roe v. Wade, right? They want to get rid of birth control. They want it. Women until 1971, I think, could not get a credit card without a man's signature.
Right.
Didn't have the vote. Long after the Civil War.
They want to get rid of Social Security.
I don't know how far back they want to take us. I mean, maybe they only want white slave, land-owning slaveholders to vote. So I don't know how deep it goes in terms of what how far back they want to take us.
Well, I know they want to go back. That's backwards instead of forward, which is backwards.
We need to go forward, and forward isn't always forward. AI, et cetera. There's a lot of things going forward that we got to be. We got to really understand before we accept. But
right. This is true. But artificial intelligence isn't as bad as 45 or Biden. Biden is, he's part of the problem, but he's not.
It's how it gets used. If it gets used to further weaken worker power,
then that's not good, obviously.
Right. But if it gets used to free humanity to pursue a greater destiny, of course we should all be.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody else have any questions other than Forrest? Hello? Anyone else?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Announce yourself.
This is Sophia.
Hey, Sophia. Hey, how are you?
Hi, guys. I'm doing okay. How's everyone? Gwen, I appreciate your program. Yeah, I appreciate your program, and congrats on having this space. And the discussion was really good to hear, just knowing you both as comrades. So it was really interesting to hear. And I guess this goes for both of you. Like, for me, sometimes I wonder, or I try to ask myself, when everything just feels so crazy, and it whether it's internally or by the system, what keeps you both coming and showing up and doing the work and doing it ethically, in spite of whatever comes at us internally, especially internally and even externally? What both keeps you at this revolutionary struggle, especially in these times that just feel harder than ever before?
Gil, you go first, and then I'll answer.
I think it's just, first and foremost, it's my mom, and her ethical grounding that got me. You could talk about the peace movement and Julie Sethel Rosenberg and civil rights, but fundamentally it was to treat everyone decently and to listen to each other and to help each other instead of pointing fingers at each other. And I expect that we're going to have to deconstruct, all the propaganda we're fed, and I expect that the people with power and money are going to send other colonized people to infiltrate and sabotage us. But it's also just the way we self-sabotage because of just the indoctrination. And the fear it provokes, the fear that we're not good enough, that we don't deserve to be loved, that we can't trust each other, that we have to step on somebody else to get ahead in life. Those are all the things that keep us from actually being happy.
That's true. That is true. Well, what keeps me involved is, number one, I know that we have more in common with the general society than we have differences, and I'm interested in the commonalities and making it a better world. And I believe we can have that. I think most people, agree, that our natural environment is imploding, and we need to do something about, our dependence on oil, and we need to do it quickly. And I think most people agree that we shouldn't be bombing Palestine right now. We should be using that money for the infrastructure of this country to better us and make the internet, safer, and to make the roads safer, and more solar power, and more money for the schools, closing some of these prisons because they're nothing but breeding ground for white supremacy. And I don't believe that everybody in prison is going to do us harm. A lot of those brothers, they made a mistake. We all do. And guess what? We get a second chance. Some of them won't get that second chance. There's people still in prison that was they were selling marijuana. Well, now marijuana is legal. So why don't they let them go? They're not going to do that because it serves a purpose to prison, and it's to oppress certain people and to scapegoat as well. And I believe that Mumia is innocent, and I think that they framed him. I know that they framed him because his political beliefs and who he is. So that's why I do what I do, because I don't like people oppressing other people. And I don't like bullying. And I believe Mumia is innocent, and that's why I do the work that needs to get done to get him released. And the other thing is, we've released a lot of political prisoners have come home because of grassroots organizing. So, because it's not impossible. It may seem like it is because, it's taking longer than we thought. But it's not impossible because other political prisoners have come home. And, we need to do this work also because there's lots of stuff to get done to make this society better. And that's why, that's another reason why I do it, because I want to make society better than than has been when I grew up. But I don't know. It doesn't seem like it. It seems like we're going backwards. But I think that's just for a moment now. I don't think it's going to last. I think it's eventually. I don't think 45 is going to get reelected, because when he first ran, he didn't have a record, but now he does, and now people know who he. They can't say that they don't really know who he is, because now they definitely know who he is and what he's all about. And I just don't think it's going to happen. I hope it doesn't anyway. But if it does, we'll survive. We've survived his first term. We've survived the Bushes of the world, and we'll survive 45. We will. But in the meantime, I'm going to focus on getting our political prisoners out because they're they put their lives on the line for us, for me, so I can have a better life and more opportunities. So we can't leave them behind. We can't. It would be morally bankrupt if we did, turn our backs on those, who laid their lives on the line to make it easier for me to have what I have and to be who I am. So, that's it. And like I said, if there's anyone on the line who wants to go to Philly, just call 212-330-8029 or go to the website freemumia.com to learn more information about how to join us for Mumia's 70th birthday. It's going to be an interesting day, a fun day, but a liberating day. And we will get him out one way or the other. We will get out, hopefully sooner rather than later, because his health is not the best.
Yeah, I agree with everything Gwen said about Mumia, but I just, and we have to get him out just because he's innocent and he was framed. But we also got, kids today that are fighting, to end gun violence against Cop City at Standing Rock, and they're going to be facing climate collapse soon. It's hard to ask them to step up and figure out how to save humanity if people are rotting in jail for 40 years just for doing the right thing. So part of the reason we have to get Mumia out is to give those young people hope, a belief that they can change things for the better and not just end up, in a prison.
Serving life terms,
right.
For simply trying to make society better.
Well, thank you both for sharing that. Appreciate the responses.
Sure. Anyone else want to ask a question of Gil, my guest, from the Free Mumia Abu-Jamal Coalition here in New York City and Mobilization for Mumia? Okay, so we don't have any more questions. It's almost 6:30. I think we're going to end it here. Gil, thank you for staying on for the extra hour to answer questions and for letting us know a little bit more about you and why you're part of the movement to Free Mumia. It's been enlightening, and maybe we'll have you back again sometime later on, in the future. We'll have you back.
Thank you, and thank you for having this show to help people find the right information and free their minds. And I've appreciated working with both you and Sophia and others, in these common struggles. That's part of what keeps me going, too, to answer Sophia's question even deeper.
Yeah.
Thank you both. This is Ricardo. I just want to say thank you, Gwen, for organizing this. I was just able to come on now. But
thank you, Ricardo. How you? Thank you. This is Dr. Ricardo Alvarez, everyone. Yeah, thank you. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, very, very grateful that you're doing this, and I just want to share with you when we think about the impact of what we're doing. I had the honor of speaking with Mumia on Thursday, And when in speaking with Mumia from a perspective of being trauma-informed and some of the harms he's received, I was sharing a concern around the influence of the FOP on the correctional officers, on the Mahanoy, the prison system. And amazingly, Mumia cites a historical case called Jamal v. Price from 1996, in which, if you'll allow me to just share the story, it's so powerful.
Yeah, please. We don't have a lot of time, but go ahead.
The three-judge federal circuit specifically cited what the FOP did to influence the correctional officers and completely supported Mumia, the way in which he was being prejudiced against, how he was being, it was the content of his speech. And one of these three judges was Samuel Alito. And not only, so I now have referenced that, I've reviewed that case, and then that evening I spoke with Satawa, who is now a released prisoner, political prisoner, and it is so beautiful to hear the power of his story, how when he came out of solitary, they set and organized around a place of self-healing across nationalities, the White Aryan Brotherhood, the Latin Kings. They came together and they organized, and 30,000 strikers occurred. So we free them because, as Mumia says, we do this for our freedom. So thank you so much for doing this, for keeping these connections and allowing us to share these stories. I'm grateful.
Thank you. Thank you,
Ricardo. And your story reminds me of the original meaning, the Fred Hampton meaning of the Rainbow Coalition.
Yes, yes. And it was just so powerful to hear Satawa speaking about it, so humble, but like so much power in the vindication of his story. So thank you for having this for this gathering.
You're welcome. Thank you. So we're going to end it here, Grown Folks family. Thank you for being part of the podcast, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. Thank you, Gil. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Forrest, and anyone else who was on. Thank you.
Love, not fear.
Love, not fear.
Free them all.
Free them all.
Free them all.